Jesse Jackson, a polarizing figure. Why did some people call him Messy Jesse? Scope News does a deep dive.
Picture this, April 4th, 1968, the Lorraine Motel in Memphis. The sun had barely begun to fade when the sound of a rifle cracked the air. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. collapsed on the balcony, blood spilling across his cheek and collar. The men who had marched beside him, Ralph Abernathy, Andrew Young, Hosea Williams, ran to his side, their faces stricken with disbelief. And in the middle of the chaos stood a young Jesse Jackson. His shirt, his face, and his hands would soon become part of one of the most controversial images in civil rights history. That was the day Jesse Jackson's rise began. And the day, some say, his credibility began to crumble. Scope News presents a deep dive. In the days that followed, Jackson became the most visible of King's surviving disciples. But the more he spoke, the more people began to whisper. He claimed he had been right there, holding Dr. King's head as he took his final breath. He said King had spoken to him in his last moments. Yet others who were present disputed that story. They said Jackson hadn't been that close at all. Ralph Abernathy would later write in his autobiography that Jesse was nowhere near King when the shot rang out, because while the rest of King's circle mourned privately, Jesse appeared on television wearing the same blood-stained shirt he'd worn that night. He went before the Chicago City Council still marked with King's blood. For some, that looked like a statement of mourning. For others, it looked like a performance. Hosea Williams went even further. He called it exploitation.
Andy, Abernathy, and Hosea Williams. Those are the three that saw that body. Now listen to that. So I got in the yard and I was about to lose my cool because I was thinking if I could take some molecules out there and make me some guns and kill me some white folks. And one man said, now be cool. You're doing the same thing you're promising me you'll never do. And I started crying, and then I heard Jesse Jackson say, he told me, Jesse, take our people on to the mountaintop. And that didn't bother me, even though I know Jesse got nowhere near him. And then Jesse said, I held his head in my hand while he died. And that didn't get to me. And then Jesse said, look at my shirt. And I looked around, sure enough, and Jesse Jackson's shirt was drenched in blood. And I realized the only way Jesse could have gotten that blood was stoop down on that floor at the Lorraine Motel and rake that blood off that floor and put that blood on him. And I went crazy. I really tried to kill Jesse. They grabbed us and all that, but that hurt me so bad. The other thing was, when Abernathy Knows came back, says no need of prayer, no need of crying, no need of nothing. He is gone. It's over with. He's gone to glory. And we called the meeting, the staff meeting, and Jesse claimed to have been ill. And Abernathy told him, Jesse, go ahead to the room and relax. Jesse had to have run like hell that room into that airport because he got out of Memphis to Chicago. All us feeling everybody was still in the motel. Cut the televisions on the next morning. There was Jesse Jackson in Chicago with that same bloody shirt on, telling that same lie. I've never respected Jesse since that moment.
That's when the nickname began, Messy Jesse. It wasn't born in newsrooms. It was whispered in barbershops, church pews, and black households across America. The term carried weight. To many, it meant someone who had taken the most sacred tragedy in Black America and made it about himself. It meant ambition that had gone too far.
That's right, we don't fool with Messy Jesse.
Still, Jesse Jackson was no lightweight. After Dr. King's death, he launched Operation Breadbasket, the economic wing of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. He pressured corporations to hire and do business with Black Americans. Under his direction, the program brought jobs and contracts worth millions into Chicago's Black neighborhoods. But his growing ego and friction with Abernathy eventually led to his expulsion from the SCLC. That moment was the start of his independent empire. Operation Push, People United to Save Humanity. Through Push, Jackson became a fixture in Black America, a preacher, activist, and political power broker who blended the pulpit with the podium. His booming sermons, delivered like gospel, drew crowds across the country. In the 1970s, when much of the civil rights movement had lost its momentum, Jesse kept the flame alive. He spoke about economic justice, police brutality, and educational inequality when few national voices still dared to. But as his profile grew, so did the criticism. To some, Jackson was the new torchbearer of Dr. King's dream. To others, he was an opportunist. Brilliant, yes, but addicted to the spotlight. By the early 1980s, Jackson's ambition had turned toward the White House. He launched his 1984 presidential campaign, becoming the first major Black candidate to make a serious run for the presidency. His Rainbow Coalition speech electrified millions. He called for unity among the oppressed, Black, white, Latino, Asian, poor, and working class. He reminded the country that America is not like a blanket, one piece of unbroken cloth. America is more like a quilt, many patches, many pieces, many colors. That speech was one of the most powerful in modern political history. But just as quickly as his campaign rose, it nearly fell apart. A Washington Post reporter revealed that Jackson had privately referred to New York City as Hymietown and called Jewish people Hymies. The remarks sent shockwaves through the nation. Jackson had spent years preaching coalition, and now his own words had turned his allies into enemies. Under mounting pressure, he publicly apologized inside a New Hampshire synagogue. But the damage was done. The scandal painted him as divisive and insincere, an image that fit too neatly with the messy Jesse reputation already growing in the Black community. In the years following his political rise, Jesse Jackson also played a defining role in shaping how Black Americans identified themselves. In 1988, he publicly urged that the term Black be replaced with African American. He argued that names carried power and that the label African American would connect descendants of slavery to their ancestral homeland with dignity, just as Irish Americans or Italian Americans honored theirs. At the time, the shift was celebrated as a cultural victory. Yet decades later, that same term has become a point of tension. With the influx of new immigrants from Africa, the Caribbean, and even those of Indian descent identifying under the same label, the meaning of African American has blurred. Movements like ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery, and FBA, Foundational Black Americans, have risen in response, arguing that the term Jackson once championed has been diluted, exploited, and weaponized to erase the specific lineage and reparations claims of those whose ancestors built America under bondage. What began as a call for unity has now become a debate over identity, and another reminder that Jesse Jackson's influence, for better or worse, continues to echo through the heart of Black America. Despite that, Jackson pressed on. His 1988 campaign was even stronger. He won several primaries, registered millions of new voters, and forced the Democratic Party to acknowledge the power of the Black electorate. Yet even in victory, controversy followed him. Some accused him of using the movement as a personal platform. His critics said his ego filled the room before his message ever could. Supporters saw him as the voice of the unheard. Detractors saw him as a man who couldn't get out of his own way. By the 1990s, Jesse Jackson had become a permanent fixture of American politics, an elder statesman who showed up in crises, mediated hostage releases, and negotiated with world leaders. But behind the pulpit charisma were personal scandals that continued to chip away at his public image. Reports surfaced of extramarital affairs, a child born outside of his marriage, and hush money payments. Even his closest allies found it difficult to defend him. To some, these revelations confirmed what they had long suspected, that Jackson's public righteousness was shadowed by private recklessness. Then came 2008. Barack Obama's historic presidential campaign reignited pride across the black community. But when Jesse Jackson was caught on a live microphone saying Obama was talking down to black people and that he wanted to cut his nuts off, it was a breaking point. The man who had once been the symbol of black leadership had turned into a cautionary tale. Jackson apologized, but the damage was done. Younger generations no longer saw him as a leader. They saw him as a relic of a messier era. Still, it would be unfair to erase Jesse Jackson's contributions. Without him, there may not have been an Obama presidency, or a new generation of black politicians who saw themselves as viable contenders on the national stage. He forced white America to take black aspirations seriously and pushed the Democratic Party to expand its platform. He opened doors, and sometimes, yes, he left a mess in his wake. In many ways, Messy Jesse became a symbol of the tension between charisma and credibility, between ambition and authenticity. He was the preacher who could move mountains but sometimes couldn't control his own image. His story is a reminder that greatness and controversy often walk hand in hand, and that, in the court of public opinion, redemption rarely comes clean. Today, as Reverend Jesse Jackson steps back from public life, the legacy remains divided. To some, he is still a hero, a man who challenged presidents and inspired generations. To others, he is a warning about what happens when a movement's purpose gets tangled with personal ambition. But no matter how one feels about him, one fact remains. From that balcony in Memphis to the political stage in Washington, Jesse Jackson was always in the frame. Always visible, always polarizing, and always, in one way or another, messy. Scope News tells the truth. Here are the facts. Jesse Jackson was present at the Lorraine Motel when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated on April 4, 1968. His televised appearances afterward, wearing what he said was King's bloodstained shirt, drew controversy among King's colleagues, including Ralph Abernathy and Hosea Williams, who later questioned the accuracy of Jackson's account. Jackson went on to found Operation Breadbasket and Operation Push, spearheading economic justice initiatives in the 1970s. His 1984 and 1988 presidential runs reshaped black political power, though the 1984 Hymietown comment severely damaged his image. The 2008 open mic remarks about Barack Obama and later personal scandals further strained public perception. In 1988, Jackson also popularized the term African American, which, though intended to unify, has since become contested amid ADOS and FBA movements. Yet despite the nickname Messy Jesse, Jackson remains one of the most influential civil rights leaders of the 20th century. Legal disclaimer. This report is intended for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes under fair use. It reflects verified historical accounts, public statements, and media coverage concerning Reverend Jesse Jackson's life and career. Scope News strives to represent historical events accurately, while acknowledging that interpretations of personal reputation may vary across communities and sources. Viewer discretion is advised, as some themes involve sensitive historical material, political controversy, and public criticism.